All right. Hello and welcome to our Estate Professional Spotlight and Q&A series. My name is Nordis Forcade-Martin. I am the founder and CEO of Florida Probate Partners, a real estate team that specializes in working with probate attorneys, professional guardians, and trust officers in helping them sell the real estate assets involved in their cases. During this series, we delve into the intricacies of probate and estate planning, and we do this with the goal of educating our community by empowering and sharing, showcasing the professionals who are problem solvers in this arena. As serious as this topic is, we like to bring light to these conversations, so do expect to have some fun. Welcome to our show. And today we have the pleasure of having Megan Moschell, attorney at the Moschell and Moschell law firm. Megan, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're super
Looking
excited
forward to it.
to get to listen to your insights, and please start off by telling us a little bit about you.
Well, I am an attorney in the estate planning and probate field. I practice with my father, but I'm also a Florida Supreme Court certified circuit civil and family mediator and have my mediation firm of Miami Mediation Group, where I do quite a bit of probate mediation and really all kinds of cases, but I think probate has a special place in my heart.
Awesome. So that's a great segue into the first question, which is, what does a mediator do and what is their role in the mediation process?
Yeah, so a mediator is a neutral and impartial third party who is selected typically by attorneys, sometimes by the parties. Sometimes they are court appointed, right, and selected for you. But they are a neutral and impartial third party that can help you um, guide a conversation and facilitate resolution. So it's all about dispute resolution, all about conflict resolution, getting parties to come together, find things that they do agree on. And it's also a confidential process, which is nice. Your mediator is not just neutral, but they also have to keep everything that happens in the mediation process private. And they're not a decision maker. So, because I would be neutral in a mediation, I can't make decisions for the parties because then I'd be maybe advocating for one side or another. I'm not a judge in this role. I'm really there as a facilitator and to try to help people come to their own decisions. And actually, under the Florida statutes, parties have a right to self determination at mediation, which means they have the right to make their own decisions about what happens with their case.
So you're a neutral human when there's
Exactly.
disputes going on. Why is alternative dispute resolution a good option for probate cases?
So I think two things. One, that confidentiality piece that I mentioned, and also efficiency. So families can keep family matters private. It's why mediation is so popular in family law cases, in dissolution of marriage cases, custody cases, because people can make decisions about their families amongst themselves and not have a judge make those decisions for them, right? So I think in probate, it just makes sense, right? It's families
Yeah.
making family decisions, but sometimes they need a little bit of help to do that, especially because they can be highly emotional. But I think for probate, it's also a really great option because there is a finite amount of resources, right? There is this amount of money that is available. Um, and I think continuing the fight, right? And not trying to come to a resolution just depletes that. And so it's really to continue on with a case where people can't see past the trees, right? It's
Yeah.
very difficult. Whereas mediation can be an efficient solution to try to get people to resolve their issues, resolve their conflicts, and come to a resolution sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And add to that, besides the limited resources, all the emotion that's already involved.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes people just wanna be heard, right? I find most often in mediation, really high conflict, high emotion kinds of cases, sometimes people just wanna get it all out, and, we talk a lot in trainings for mediators about how impactful it can be sometimes for people to have their day in court, but why can't mediation be that? Of course it
Mm,
can, right? You have an audience, you have someone listening to you. That's my job as a mediator, to listen to your clients, right? Have them tell me how they're feeling about it and then effectively relay that message to the other party who's going to do the same thing, right? So that we can try to bridge that gap and come to a resolution. And a lot of times I'm seeing that people sometimes what they want really isn't all that different. It's just getting them, out of their own way sometimes.
yeah. So you come in, you're neutral, you put as best as you can the emotion to the side to focus on what is the outcome that each party is looking for, and then you come to the realization that a lot of times it's very similar.
It
It's just
can
that,
be, yeah,
yeah,
and we're definitely putting the emotion to a side at some point, but I think in the beginning, it's important to let people vent and have those emotions and get out what they're trying to say so that they feel heard, they feel listened to, because it's so much easier to then identify the issues, figure out some solutions, and a path forward, um, because they were able to get that off their chest.
right.
So sometimes that's the hardest part is getting people to, feel comfortable to open up about some of these things, but, it takes a little bit of time. Sometimes mediations can go all day, sometimes you have multiple sessions, and sometimes people are very quick to just get to the point, and they're ready to talk to you right away. So there's just different dynamics with different personalities, and every mediation is different. Every combination of personalities and backgrounds and problems, everyone's different. So, uh, having a mediator who understands the probate area is helpful, because they're not playing catch up on the law. But also having somebody who is good with people, I think, is particularly helpful in probate. I think that's where there's a difference in somebody who frequently mediates, insurance cases or, even employment cases. Probate's kind of a different animal, right?
Right, right. And I was going to say before you said that in your demeanor as we've talked, you can it's obvious, it's evident why you make it easy. I think you would make it easy for
Thank you.
someone to feel like they can vent, right? So, and
Thanks.
I can see how that plays a huge part in being a great mediator. And I think you already answered that question, right? So, what should you look for when choosing a mediator is how easy is it for them to connect with people, and how, and especially then in probate, are they familiar with that, with probate cases? Do they have that background, that familiarity, so that they don't have to play catch up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely takes both, I think, in probate. Another mediator, I was just at the Florida Bar Conference and she was asking me questions about probate and guardianship for a mediation that she had. And she's a wonderful mediator, but it did make me think how helpful would that knowledge have been at the time in the mediation when they were coming to an agreement to sort of know that process. So I think
Sure.
this is a particular area of the law where some knowledge of probate can be very, very impactful and very helpful.
Awesome. So what happens if parties don't come to an agreement in mediation?
Yeah, and I always try to, if we don't come to an agreement, at least make sure that mediation was useful in some way, that we got something accomplished, whether that's a step forward, where do we go next, what still needs to be done to be able to come to an agreement. I will often follow up with parties afterwards and say, hey, have the discussions continued? Should we schedule something else after, XYZ is done? Do we need to do another deposition or get an appraisal of something before we decide that we're, going to move forward and we can do this at a later date? So following up and keeping the parties engaged in the progress that they had had so far at mediation is very helpful. And there are definitely times where we'll end mediation at an impasse and, 2, 3 days later, I'll check on the attorneys and they'll say, "Yeah, we're working on our settlement agreement. We're getting it done. It'll
Mm,
be done by the end of the week," because sometimes they just needed to sleep on it or they needed a little bit more time. So, making sure that in the mediation, you're trying to come out with something rather than just impasse, right? Either, plans forward, right? What are the next steps that need to be taken in order to, move things along and move things forward?
That is such a good point because I feel like a lot of people have this misconception that you have to come to an agreement during mediation, and they don't realize that you started off when we were going over how mediation works or what it is that you do, that you have self-determination as part of this, right? You can decide if you do want to agree with, whatever terms that come up, or you can decide to, I want to sleep on it. That is such a good point because people probably think I have to make a decision right here and now, and that could probably stop them they get in their way, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And you can come to partial agreements at mediation. I've had where people say, okay, well, we'll agree that this particular asset, you know, should be treated as homestead, or we're going to stipulate to that. Or we agree that this asset should be divided between, all four children, right? But everything else we don't agree on. So there's creative solutions in mediation that you can't necessarily accomplish through other means of the litigation process.
Sure. So we've gotten to the fun part of our interview. And give me 1 second, Megan, because
Of
I
course.
dropped my mic. Give me 1 second.
Oh
Beauty of what happens when you have to be on your feet, right?
no.
So a little blooper never hurt anyone. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
All right, so we're going to get into the fun part, and thank you again for sharing your insight and your expertise. We're going to get into the fun part where we get to know Megan on a more personal level, get to know the human Megan instead, not just the attorney Megan. So, or the mediator Megan. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Oh goodness. I was a big Disney kid. I'm a Disney adult, I guess. And not really. I'm not crazy about, but it just the nostalgia, of those trips as a kid with my family and um my mom and my dad and the old big camcorders that were like this big and family videos and seeing the characters, and sometimes we'll just have family nights at home now where we'll go back and watch VHS tapes of those vacations as a kid. So definitely I think little vacations to theme parks with my family is probably my some of my favorite childhood memories.
That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite color?
Blue. I'm wearing a
Ditto.
little blue today. I love
Love it.
blue. All shades.
You can't see, but my tank top is navy blue. I love blue. All shades of blue.
Beautiful.
What's one item on your bucket list?
Oh, so my husband and I actually wanted to do a cruise in Alaska for our honeymoon. We ended up doing something a little closer to home in the Caribbean, but that's definitely still on my bucket list. I want to do a big Alaska trip, the whale watching, the glaciers, the hikes. I want to do maybe even a helicopter tour. I really want to go and do the big Alaska trip, go through Denali. That's definitely on my bucket list.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. And
Yeah,
everyone
we're
has
thinking
so many great
anniversary
things to
trip.
say about it.
Yeah. Fun
That is
fact,
awesome.
after undergrad, I was a high school teacher, and then I went and worked for a cruise line for a little bit. All of this was before law school. And when I worked for the cruise line, they took cruises in Alaska, and I didn't even know that that was an option before. So when I started hearing all the feedback from my guests that I was sending to Alaska on cruises, I was like, this is the trip. This is the trip I must take. So it's been a long time coming, but hopefully we'll plan a little anniversary trip one of these days to Alaska. Do it big.
So you were a high school teacher for a little bit?
I was a language arts teacher for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I did 10th grade and 12th grade.
No wonder you have the patience to be a mediator. You should have
Yeah, it
started
was
off
great.
with that.
It was great. It was wonderful. Really, really good
That is
experience.
awesome. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
All right, two more questions. So you meet a stranger, what's the first thing you notice about them?
Probably their smile. I'm a little bit smiley, and I feel like I notice that in other people. So yeah, I think you can tell a lot about a person and their warmth from their smile.
Love that. My last question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So my best friend, when I was deciding to go to law school, I was so worried about the student loans, and I was so worried about I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, of was I going to even be any good at this? I had my dad was a lawyer, and so for me it was, oh, am I just doing this because it's the family business? So there were a lot of, was a lot of doubt, and she said to me, she said, "You are your best investment in everything
Mm,
in life. You are your best investment." Like, at the end of the day, that's who you have, right? You have if you're gonna give your time and your energy and your money and your everything, if you're gonna give it to yourself because you are your best investment.
wow.
And so on days when I'm struggling, I think about that sometimes and think, "All right, let's invest in ourselves today because, it's got good returns."
That is so awesome. Great advice.
Yeah,
And yeah, you are gonna give yourself the best ROI because it's you're working on you.
right. Yep.
Love that. Love that. That's awesome. Megan, I loved this talk. Thank
Same.
you so much for joining us and for sharing your expertise, your insight with us. We really appreciate getting to know you also. It's no doubt that there's beauty all around you and you really do the warmth is there and we really appreciate your time. How can our followers reach you?
My website is miamimediationgroup.com, and my email is miamimediationgroup@gmail.com. My phone number is 786-766-1501. Happy to talk to anybody about mediation, estate planning, probate administration, whatever I can help with. I'm always here to help. And I just want to say thank you for doing interviews and videos like this and getting the word out to people. I think it's really helpful and impactful, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Take care.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
You too.